Thank you. Okay. Welcome to Wiki Women in Religion. And we're challenging systemic bias in online resources. And my name is Rosalind Hinton. I'm an independent scholar, and I've been working with Wikipedia since 2018. I started with the Parliament of the World Religions. I want to thank Luke and I want to thank Rebecca Bartell. They have started a new session, a new unit this year, publicly engaged scholarship in the study of religion. And that's what we are a part of this time. So it's pretty wonderful. What I want all the guests to do is to ask questions in the chat. I'm going to be your facilitator today, and we have 6 people who are approaching Wikipedia similarly yet differently, and they each have their own stories. And I'm going to begin with Colleen Hartung, who's going to give us a little background and introduce herself. And so, Colleen, take it away.
All right, next slide.
Oops. Hold on. There we go. Sorry. Oh, geez. It kicked me out. Slideshow. Okay.
And the next slide after that. Okay, hi, I'm Colleen Hartung, and I live near Madison, Wisconsin. I have been part of this project since its beginning at the 2018 Parliament of the World's Religions in Toronto. There are lots of Wikipedia projects that improve content on Wikipedia. The Women in Religion project works to improve content about undercovered women in religion. We originally operated under the auspices of the Women's Caucus of the American Academy of Religion and the Society of Biblical Literature. We became an official Wikipedia user group in 2021. The mission of the Women in Religion project is to create, update, and improve Wikipedia articles pertaining to the lives of cis and transgender women who are active as scholars, activists, and practitioners in the world's religious, spiritual, and wisdom traditions. We seek to write women back into history, especially those who have made an impact in their faith and religious communities. Next slide. Those of us committed to the Women in Religion project are compelled by the gender gap on Wikipedia, where most of the biographies on the site are written about men. Most articles are written by men, and Wikipedia's notability and sourcing guidelines are largely written by men, which is significant because these policies determine which articles about women are hosted on Wikipedia and which are not. Notability guidelines are based on how much coverage about a subject exists in secondary sources, such as newspapers, journals, trade books, and more. This can be a problem, even for accomplished women. For example, Donna Strickland did not have a Wikipedia page on October 2nd, 2018, the day she won the Nobel Prize for Physics. Up until that moment, her work was largely uncovered in secondary sources. Therefore, she did not qualify as notable enough to be covered by a biography on Wikipedia. Unfortunately, this is not an uncommon event. Many women who are accomplished and influential at all levels of society do not qualify for coverage because their work is not recognized in secondary sources. The gap in coverage between noteworthy men and noteworthy women is the Women in Religion Wikipedia project's reason for being. Next slide. You can find out more information about our project at our project page. Just Google Wiki Project, Women in Religion, and it will be one of the first hits on your Google search. Next slide. So what do we do here at the Women in Religion project, and how can you participate? The project started with a list of 1,000 notable women in the world's religious and wisdom traditions, collected for the 2018 Parliament of the World's Religions. I'm going to say a little aside here. We started out thinking that we were going to write 1,000 articles. Yeah, we learned quickly that it's a little bit more complicated than that. So it became a list of 1,000 women who should be on Wikipedia, but were not. Next slide. 6 years later, that list, oh, and go on to the next slide. 6 years later, that list exists and it continues on our project page as a crowdsourced list, a Wikidata list, and many other topic-oriented lists. Wikipedia editors use these lists as suggestions for their own editing projects. Next slide. Anyone is free to add a woman in religion to the crowdsourced list, as long as you have 2 reliable secondary sources to include with your entry. With a few basic Wikipedia editing skills, you can easily add women to the crowdsourced list yourself. But even more easily today, you can suggest an entry along with sources in our chat, and we will get those women added to the list. Please do that. Next slide. So the lists are important. They are the heart of the project. But the energy that keeps people engaged is the desire to get women on the list represented on Wikipedia, as well as improving the pages of women with existing articles. And this requires helping people figure out how Wikipedia works. To this end, we recruit and train editors by holding editathons in our local areas, at national conferences, and on virtual platforms like Zoom. And another aside, we will be holding an editathon at the AAR SBL meeting this fall. We work to improve existing articles that need editing for writing style and grammar, and for content and for accuracy. We create new biographical entries on Wikipedia. That takes a bit of learning and practice, but our project advises and supports new editors. And we add photos to Wiki Commons. And this is because articles about women on Wikipedia have fewer photos associated with them than articles about men. Not a surprise. Next slide. I want to close this section with one example of our many editing accomplishments. Mary Gatui is a Kenyan theologian and professor of religious studies at the Catholic University of East Africa. She was nominated and accepted for a Did You Know blurb featured on the Wikipedia main page because she was awarded the Moran of the Burning Spear by the President of Kenya for outstanding and distinguished service. Polly Hamlin, a superwoman in religion Wikipedian, did the work to get this article to featured status. Polly passed away last December, but her influence continues as others have worked to keep improving Mary Gatui's page since it was first featured, including Rosie Stephenson Goodnight, a Wikipedia board member and supporter of our project. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we are going to go to Christine Wambacher-Meyer, who will introduce herself and also tell a little of her story and how she got involved with us.
Hello, everyone. As Rosalind said, I'm Christine Meyer. I am a longtime Wikipedia editor and contributor. I live in Moscow, Idaho. Next slide. In the summer of 2014, I was invited to attend a series of training workshops about how to run editathons and other organizing events in Washington, D.C. Also in attendance was Rosie Stephenson Goodnight, as Colleen just mentioned. Out of these meetings, she funded Wiki Project Women Writers in August 2014, which ended up being the precursor to a much more successful Wiki project, Women in Red, which was founded by Rosie and Roger Bamkin. Consequently, I'm proud to say, to quote from the great musical Hamilton, that I was in the room when it happened, namely the creation of one group that has successfully made inroads to solving the gender gap, systemic bias, and content gaps on Wikipedia that led to another even more successful group. This presentation is about the impact of just one person, me, has had in this effort. It's always good when you can add in a Hamilton reference, I think. Next slide. The Wikipedia editing community has made concerted efforts to deal with solving the enormous problem of the gender and content gaps on Wikipedia, some of which Colleen already talked about. Women in Red and other groups like ours have made inroads, but there's so much more that needs to be done. Here are some statistics about the progress Women in Red has made in the past 10 years. Perhaps you're thinking, that's not such a big deal. But when you think about it, it's a significant contribution. And I think Women in Religion has also made a significant contribution. Next slide. Early on in my editing career, my first edit was in 2008. I wasn't all that aware of the gender gap and content gaps on Wikipedia. My involvement with the Women Writers Wiki project was due to my contributions of about a dozen articles about Maya Angelou, which surprisingly was a much neglected topic on Wikipedia at the time. That thing on the right is the navigation bar that's at the bottom of most Wikipedia articles. As you can see, she's no longer a much neglected topic. Next slide. I have 3 other niches on Wikipedia: children's music and media, figure skating, and obscure female saints. The middle slide is the info box on Una Kim's bio, something I've been working on lately. The one on the right is another recent project due to my involvement with the Women in Religion Wiki project. I joined the project in June 2020. It's my 4th year anniversary during the COVID shutdowns because I was bored and I wanted to contribute more deeply. I've improved, created, and updated about 30 articles about female saints in that time. Actually, in the past week, I stumbled upon another Clotita. You might have heard of it, the last slave ship to bring slaves from West Africa to the US. There's a documentary on Netflix that I highly recommend. I wondered if the ship was named after the saint. It could be because the slaves were French colony, but I wasn't able to find any evidence of that. And actually, I'm kind of glad because the idea of it kind of horrified me, because how would I be able to reconcile a slave ship being named for a saint who I've gotten to know through working on her Wikipedia bio? It demonstrates the connection we make with the people we study and write about on Wikipedia. Next slide. At first, the editing community used the strategy of increasing the numbers of female editors to solve both the gender gap and content gaps on Wikipedia, and my history reflects that. You'll see the statistics there, which demonstrate the progress towards making Wikipedia more egalitarian and diverse in the last several years. Wiki Education, a group that encourages the editing of Wikipedia articles in college classrooms, takes credit for that substantial increase because their programs occur in the US and Canada, and probably because North American participants in secondary education tend to be more diverse and more women are entering colleges and universities there. Next slide. Especially in the last 4 years since joining the Women in Religion project, that simply increasing the diversity of editors isn't the best solution to solving the gender gap and content gap on Wikipedia. As the late Adrienne Wadowitz, an academic and one of my mentors during my early days as an editor, wrote shortly before her death in 2014, it's not only up to individual women to solve the gender gap on Wikipedia. In other words, the task is so monumental that it requires more than individual editors like me tackling it on their own, although that is a significant start and important part of the strategy. The real improvements in mitigating the gender gap and content gaps on Wikipedia have been made when there have been concerted effort by several factions of the editing community, men and women, and other groups have organized for the purpose of solving the problem. And I think that that community aspect of it is what sets us apart as a project on Wikipedia. Our own Colleen Hartong calls the members of this group activists, and we are. And I believe that these activist groups can serve as a model for what can happen when groups are organized to solve specific problems on Wikipedia. The solution then is to build community. One of the benefits of my involvement with the Women in Religion Project is the support, encouragement, and mentorship I've received. For me, and I think for other members, the Women in Religion Project has been a place to come and vent and get support, something that's been invaluable to me and has more times than not kept me going. We even attend and present at conferences together. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to turn it back to Colleen to share with you some, a little more deeply, some of our work past the overview. Thank you, Colleen.
All right. A major focus of our project is the creation of reliable secondary sources about women. Studies show that there is less biographical coverage of women in trade books, encyclopedias, in journals, in news media, and more. It's just across the board. This deficit of reliable secondary sources is one of the factors that frustrates our editors and makes it difficult to write a successful submission for some of the women on the Women in Religion list. So we are engaged in some practical efforts to address this problem. We host a panel at the annual meeting of the AAR and the SBL on women's biographies. Through these panels, and also in conjunction with the Parliament of the World's Religions, we work to publish biographies about women not on Wikipedia, which are then used as secondary sources for the creation of Wikipedia articles. These volumes are published on open access platforms, which means that they are available free online. Hard copies are also available. We publish in this way in order to promote an equitable access to knowledge, which is a problem on all knowledge platforms, including Wikipedia. Actually, it's a problem across the board. This slide is a list of the women who have new Wikipedia pages as a result of these problems. Several of these pages have been featured on Wikipedia's main page. We keep a running list on our project page of chapters from these volumes that remain to be covered on Wikipedia. You can feel free to begin a Wikipedia entry on any of these women. Next slide. Check out our first 3 volumes in the Women in Religion biography series: Claiming Notability for Women Activists in Religion, Challenging Bias Against Women Academics in Religion, and Women Advancing Knowledge Equity, the Parliament of the World's Religions. The call for papers for our next volume, focused on goddess and women-centered religions and spiritualities, will be coming out soon. If you sign up for the follow-up information on this panel, you will receive the call. Please join us. We need writers. Thank you.
I have one question that I'm going to answer. The last one: how do you become a part of our group? At the end, I'm going to ask Carol to press our project page, or maybe one of you who are sitting like Clifford could put our project page in the chat. And you just have to sign up there. We meet every second Monday of the month. And with the Kenya group, we meet every Wednesday lately. And so it's pretty easy. You can also email any of us, and we're happy to get you involved and mainstream you. Now I'm going to go on to a case study, Mapping the Gender Gap. And this is Cindy Rasmussen, who's a new member of our group. And we're so excited to have her as part of both the Women's Caucus at the AAR and as a part of our Wikipedia group.
Thank you, Rosalind. It's great to be here with you. And as Rosalind just said, I became familiar and part of the group at November's meeting. So I'm very new, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share a bit of what I've done in a Reformation class that I teach in mostly MDiv students. Next slide. So these are some goals that I have with the Wikipedia piece of class. Students become adept at finding and sharing cis and trans women Wikipedia articles with classmates. They develop the skills to critically engage Wikipedia articles. And as a class, students identify cis and trans women who are not represented on Wikipedia and add them to that list, that crowdsourcing list that Colleen was talking about. Also, students imagine how these voices, once added, could impact the historical narrative more broadly. Next slide. So this is, actually, I took a screenshot of this particular article a few days ago, and you can see that under Protestant reformers, there are no women mentioned under notable precursors or the kind of what's identified as the main reformers. So next slide. So in addressing or beginning to address the gender gap, I wanted to give you kind of a picture of a Bernadette Bruden quote that is kind of seared in my mind. And she wrote this concerning women's history. Men have many roles, and their reality varies as to social class, geographical region, race, religion, historical periods, etc. Into this dynamic, active landscape, we now place women, a clay figurine, which is put into a place at someone and some point in a already moving scene. One can now discuss her role, her status, her relation to men in the scene, if, as the discussion proceeds, one notices that women actually have several roles, or that the status of slave women in a society in question differs from the status of aristocratic women. One adds new clay figurines. So the idea of this, you can see on the bottom half of the slide, is oftentimes how Reformation history is taught. There's the active movement of the figures on top. And then if we want to talk about women, we talk about people like Queen Isabella, but link her to Ferdinand or Luther's wife, Katie von Bora, Anne Boleyn. Those are just some examples. And that's kind of the best case scenario. Oftentimes, there's also the approach of sharing kind of works like John Knox that is very much against women. Next slide. So this is the first slide that I present to my class when working on this project. The first one, the first row looks familiar to you because it was on the previous slide. So I want students to know the kind of dynamic nature of those figures, and also recognize that cis and trans women in Christian history, they do exist. And it's our job as a class to start to populate that second row. Next slide. So you can see here as the class, and this is, I do this on a whiteboard so students can just move their Wikipedia articles into that row and populate it during class or possibly on an assignment afterwards. So you can see that 3 women were added here. And also, I also create stickers that represent the continents of these perspectives. Next slide. So then students are asked, after they populate that second row, what they're noticing about kind of the contributions. And oftentimes what happens, because we're focused on Reformation history, all of the content is around European voices. So these are three examples on the bottom that show additional women in the 16th century. And what it does is it broadens out beyond the Christian perspective, but during this same century nonetheless. And next slide. So that was kind of the before, and now this is the after of what a sampling of what could be created by the class. So you can see here that various continents are represented. There's various figures, including women. And then the class is asked to start to imagine a new narrative of history. What would that mean if these folks were put into the conversation and kind of the ecosystem? And so this creates a map that includes multiple voices. It's dynamic because it changes with every class that I teach. And it's really about those students' contributions and what they want to bring to the class. So thank you for the time to share my case study.
This is so wonderful. Thank you. Anybody with questions, please put them in as you think of them, but you can also ask questions later. And we'll keep moving on here. And this is Telesia Musili, and she will discuss a rapid grant and what we are trying to accomplish to overcome the gender and ethnicity gap and continent gap in Kenya. Please, Telesia, take it away.
Thank you so much, Rosalind, and thank you everyone for joining in with us today. My name is Telesia Kadhini Musili. I am a lecturer at the University of Nairobi, Department of Philosophy and Religious Studies. And I'm also a member of the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians, Kenya chapter. And my talk today centers on a grant that the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians, Kenya chapter received from Wikimedia to help in overcoming the gender bias on Wikipedia pages. And the name of our project is Expanding Wikipedia Editors in Kenya. Next slide. Yeah, the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians is a pan-African academic association of women from all religions who are residents of the African continent. It was founded in the year 1989 by Mercy Aba Odioye on the right. I do not have rights to show that, but then she is a public and a notable figure, so you can see her there, to address issues affecting women of African descent in the various African diasporas. And so that is why, as the circle, we research, we publish, and we interact with communities on issues relating to culture and religion that cause domination and gender power differences. Therefore, the circle's main agenda is to investigate and theologize on how culture and religion affect women's lives and how they can be interpreted to empower women and their communities. The circle therefore carries out academic research and seeks to have a transformative impact on the lives of African women and the communities they inhabit. The agenda of the circle, therefore, is gender-centered, interreligious, interdisciplinary, intersectional, and transformative association. It carries a gender-centered analysis of religion's content and its impact on women and children on issues affecting the society. That is health, ethnicity, environment, and the like. Next slide. And so the gender bias story or context revolves around the history of colonization. Colonization impacted African knowledge systems. And so the Western concepts of formal education as they were introduced in the continent impacted on women's position and possibility in academic discourses. For instance, the colonial Western epistemology, which was patriarchal, introduced androcentric, hierarchical, and dualistic worldviews on African communities. This androcentric colonial culture, coupled with the introduction of patriarchal Christian religion, resulted into disintegration of the community through the establishment of androcentric schools and curriculum. Boys and men were allowed to go to school, receive formal education, while women and girls stayed at home managing the homestead. So this system of education and Christianity intensified patriarchy, for there were relationships that were more flexible and inclusive to various genders, but they became male-centered. Thus, colonization distanced African people from knowledge production and suppressed all knowledge or African knowledge. And so this meant that the African women were thrown to the deeper end, away from the limelight and away from academic discourses. This case plays on Wikipedia pages. Very few African women theologians have articles on Wikipedia, despite their resilience and contribution to religion, theology, and spirituality in multiple ways. As a result, the continent's structural systems and structures continue to drive a resounding exclusion of feminine epistemic perspectives within and practical life experiences. This androcentric-oriented African philosophy and theology has resulted in excluding women in knowledge production spheres, a challenge that Mercy Amba Odioye challenges and the entirety of the Circle of Concerned African Women Theologians. Next slide, please. Looking into Wikipedia, you will find very few women theologians who have articles. I have sampled just two of them. Mercy Amba Odioye has an elaborate article in Wikipedia. We have Teresia Barry-Iga, Musa Dube, Isabel Firi, and the like. However, a majority of African women theologians, religious activists, and spiritualists have received little or no attention on Wikipedia or online. This overlooks their knowledge production and sidelines their contributions to religious studies. So on the project grant, we highlighted the challenges that we go through. One is lack of internet access. Few Wikipedia editors in Kenya specifically. As you have seen in the articles I've shared, there are no photographs of the matriarchs in Wiki pages, and most of their publications exist in libraries across different countries, this making it really difficult to reconstruct and highlight their work. And so the grant enables us to do this, and its goal is to get some selected circle matriarchs on Wikipedia and improve the pages on women in religion with, those who have existing articles. And so our goal is to pass down knowledge intergenerationally as well as across continents. Next slide, please. And so with the grant, we have ongoing articles on different sandboxes. I just sampled from two of our colleagues. And this has enabled us train on how to construct articles from the scratch and also edit a few. We are trying to come up with an article on Anna Wageshi Kinoti, who was a theologian in the University of Nairobi. And we have Damaris Elena Pastel, who is currently the director of Nagel Institute's Calvin University, headed by Templeton Foundation. And so we look forward to more support as we continue to address Wikipedia gender bias, especially regarding women in religion and especially in Africa. Thank you so much, Women in Religion, for incorporating us into this project. Thank you again for listening. Rosalie, you are mute.
Yeah.
A lot of the articles that we have gotten on Wikipedia, like Teresia Hinga, was a secondary source article I wrote, and then someone else did the Wikipedia article. And so it's very exciting to be working with Kenya to expand their reach. The next person is Carol Sargent, who's been kind enough to also do all the slides for us. And Carol, please introduce yourself and tell them where you are.
I'm in Washington, D.C., and I'm the founding director of the Office of Scholarly Publications, which means I work with all of our faculty and all departments and all programs. And over time, I've become involved with some of these groups that you see here. And last summer, I started editing on Wikipedia, thinking I was all by myself. And then gradually, I found out how many other people and groups are interested, including our Women's Center, our LGBTQ Center, our Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs, and other groups, our Disability Access Center. We have a lot of different groups who got super excited. And of course, our library here, Allowanger Library. And it's a Catholic and Jesuit university. And I say that because a lot of people don't know it. And in fact, as the religious congregations begin to shrink historically, that may become a more, historic designation for us. But right now, it still is Catholic and Jesuit. And that had a big influence over my own sort of focus on the lack of Catholic sisters. I saw some of that at my own university, where I feel like there are some sisters here, some very well-respected ones, but not enough. And they earned some of the first medical degrees at any university in the world, because a lot of Catholic universities back in the 1800s even made space for women religious, which is another term for nuns, to earn degrees there and also to go on for advanced study. And sometimes almost a century before women were formally admitted to medical schools, for example. And I got also, once I started signaling to our library and to other groups on campus that I was interested in Wikipedia, a lot of folks swooped in, because a lot of folks have been doing this on their own, and they started setting up editathons that I started participating in. This one was for Women's History Month at Georgetown. They called it All the Rage, Channel Our Feminist Rage into Wikipedia editing, and of course some of the key statistics there. This is my friend Beth Marhenka, and she is the director of outreach at Allowanger Library. She has hosted some of these editathons, and she's also worked with others who do. And for this panel, she contributed this comment that the editathons at Georgetown opened my eyes to the realities of history and remembrance. What is written down is what will be remembered. If we don't record women's stories and their impacts on the world, they will fade into the ether. We both choose Wikipedia because of its billions of page views each month. No other reference work gets that. And then we can always flow it into the other reference works. And this is a great group that has helped us, which is the Wikimedia group for Washington, D.C. They were wonderful. As soon as I wasn't the one who reached out to them, one of the other people, Rebecca, in our group, reached out to them, and they came over and would actually physically do editathons with us. And so I really encourage anybody who's attending this panel, who's thinking about getting involved with your own organization, don't be the Lone Ranger. There are regional Wikimedia groups and Wikipedia groups who might want to help you, and for whom you would be a very big piece of why they're showing that that they're having an impact. Now, this is one of the articles I did, because after I do a Wikipedia article, and I'm going to show you a few women that I've done, I try to flow it out into other things. This was for Global Sisters Report. Those were actually, the nuns on my street. And this sister right here became a star football predictor. In fact, People Magazine gave her a send-off when she passed away a few years ago, and you could look her up, Sister Marie Louise Kirkland. Let's see, I'm gonna skip that slide. Sister Eileen Needfield is one that I wrote about, Sister Mary Frederick Needfield. She was in the very first Georgetown class that admitted women. She was not only valedictorian, but she received the highest national board grades in pathology in the United States. Maybe some of those guys now are starting to think they wish they had kept the women out, because she totally creamed all the stats. It was wonderful. Students signed a petition for the university to name a medical pavilion after her, but it was ultimately named for the donor. But she wasn't on Wikipedia. I was absolutely stunned. And so she's one of the ones. Also, this is Helen Caldwell Day Riley, who was a best-selling Catholic author in the 1940s. She was discovered by the powerhouse Catholic publishing couple of Sheed and Ward. And actually, Maisie Ward was really the driving force behind that. You see a photo of her here, but there's no photo of her on Wikipedia because I'm having trouble finding the rights. And this is a big problem with all women, but also especially women of color, any women of marginalized groups, is how do we find out who took the photo and how do we get the rights? I'm going to try to reach out to her son. Here's her book, Color Ebony. And imagine this was published in 1951. We think of the 60s as being, you know, sort of the civil rights era, but she was way ahead of the curve. And there she is with her son, who I'm also trying to find. And she even did a second book. And so I think she's a wonderful part of the story of women in religion, as she became a Catholic worker house founder. My friend, Sister Ilia Delio, she was not my friend when I wrote this, but what happened was I reached out to her for permission to create this on her. She taught at Georgetown. She's now at Villanova, but I knew of her because of Georgetown. I mean, this woman is the Josephine C. Connolly Endowed Chair of Theology at Villanova, and one of the most prominent theologians in the country in Catholic theology. Didn't have a page. Sister Regina Pertel, my star, because she was my first good article, which is a designation you can get. Takes a lot of scrutiny for that. The Florence Nightingale of the Spanish-American War, who personally nursed not just Teddy Roosevelt, but his Rough Riders. And my friend now, but again, like I say, I didn't know these people when I did it, Chris Schenck, the nun and founding director of Future Church, and one of the landmark books of women in authority in early Christianity, Crispinette and her sisters. And oops, let me go back one. So anyway, that's where we stand now. I just keep adding them none by none, but I'm really taking a word from this panel to also try to put together more groups of people who are going to work with me, not just to get these women on Wikipedia, but then to flow them into other resources, and also to flow them out to places like Global Sisters Report and also the mainstream media.
Thank you, Carol. That was fabulous. And now I'm going to turn this over to Clifford, our Yale librarian, who's very into AI. And I think this one is about don't be afraid. We work as a group. So Clifford, please take it over.
Thank you so much, Rosalind. And thanks again to everybody on the panel. It's really impressive work that everybody's doing. And I'm just happy to be part of this. One of the things I think is great about this group is exactly what you said, this kind of freedom to experiment. And so we've been experimenting with the idea of using AI to overcome bias. And now the thing is, you often hear about AI causing bias, which is definitely a problem. But in our case, we're trying to think about AI as helping us to produce more articles and fill that gender gap that exists. Let's go to the next slide, please. So I'm just going to say this, very quickly. This is sort of what I want to talk about. So we'll just move on to the next slide, please. And the first thing I want to say is our goal here is to accelerate the writing of articles, because as anyone knows, and as some of you have heard, it's not easy to create new articles on Wikipedia. I mean, there's a lot of steps that you have to learn in terms of interacting with the environment, and you also have to be able to synthesize information from lots of different sources, establish notability, and it can take time. And so one of the things we're thinking about is, as we develop these lists, would there be a way that we could help to produce articles more quickly by manufacturing so-called stub articles? These are just articles that kind of sketch out, just enough to have a Wikipedia article, and we maybe could do that with AI. So that was our goal, accelerating the production of articles about women and religion. Let's move to the next slide, please. But as you may know, in our very earliest experimentations, when ChatGPT came out, we ran straight into a problem that everyone has experienced, namely that if you ask ChatGPT to write an article, what goes wrong? Well, it makes up references and other details. And just recently, this is an article that just came out, I think, yesterday, so this is really up to date. It's called ChatGPT as a Research Scientist, Probing GPT's Capabilities as a Research Librarian, Research Ethicist, Data Generator, and Data Predictor by Stephen Lair et al. They actually measured the number of mistakes or illusions, hallucinations that GPT developed when creating bibliographies. And this was their results. They said, comparing both GPT 3.5 and 4, both models hallucinated, but GPT 3.5 did so more than GPT 4. Out of 500 references that GPT 4 claimed were real, 5% were illusions, and 36% for GPT 3.5. But even 5% is a problem. You can't put up fake references on Wikipedia. That's not welcome. It's a bad way to start. So I want to say just a little bit of a technical word about how these hallucinations develop. And one thing that I think that we may want to change our terminology about is, it's not that we have a hallucination problem. This is a quotation from a leading scholar named Andrej Karpathy. And he says, I always struggle a bit when I'm asked about the hallucination problems in large language models, because in some sense, hallucinations is all LLMs do. They are dream machines. We direct their dreams with prompts. The prompts start the dream, and based on the LLM's hazy recollection of its training documents, most of the time the result goes somewhere useful. It's only when the dreams go into factually incorrect territory that we label it a hallucination. It looks like a bug, but it's just what the LLM does, doing what it always does. So in some sense, we can actually, be kind of amazed that it gets things mostly right most of the time. But still, we can do better. Let's go to the next slide. So one of the things that we've been working on in our group is something called retrieval augmented generation. And the idea here is that we provide the large language model with a better understanding of the context that we want. Now, there's some technical sort of building blocks for doing this, but the basic idea is that we want to send our prompts to what's called a vector database, and then send the results from that database to the large language model. And the idea is that we will ask this database for authoritative references, quotations, and citations, bibliographic literature, and pass that on to the large language model. And then it can use that extra context to actually fill out the stub articles with authoritative references. Let's go to the next slide, please. But there have been some practical considerations as we develop this. Everyone will probably acknowledge it's not been as easy as we thought it was. And I'll just list a few of those. One is we've had issues finding digestible sources that we can put into this vector database. Sometimes we've had problems, for example, with PDFs that are actually image-based PDFs, just kind of photographs of pages that don't do the optical character recognition or OCR well. We've had at times difficulty finding a single source we can all easily contribute to. So how do we get articles once they collect them into this database? We're still working on that. We're also interested in the copyright and licensing questions. Can we just take documents from our various libraries and feed it into a database? Is that fair use? And then on the other side, what counts as authorship coming out? So if we get a stub article, how do we put it onto Wikipedia? How do we acknowledge that this was created by an AI? What level of editing should we do first before we post it? And then I think we're kind of entering into this territory of what will co-authorship, not just with another human, but with an AI look like eventually? How do we kind of balance each other's out? How do we kind of build on each other's strengths while correcting for each other's weaknesses? I think these are all things that we're continuing to explore. But it's been a wonderful group to explore this with. I think we're excited. If you're interested in taking part in some of these explorations yourself, we'd love to have you. Next slide. I think that may be. Oh, yeah. So here's our future projects. I'll end here. Want to create AI-generated stubs for every article on our Women in Religion list. We want to create a methodology. There's been some really good work in our group about evaluating how well those AI-generated stubs have worked. And then, oh, sorry for the spelling mistake. And then we want to develop something like a reinforcement learning with human feedback framework. This is fancy terminology just for saying, I'll give this stub a thumbs up or this stub a thumbs down. And that way we can perhaps take our own judgments of these stubs and incorporate it back into our model to improve it so that actually the AI gets better over time with our feedback. And so thanks, everybody. And again, please join us if you'd like to. We'd love to have you.
Thank you, Clifford. This is just wonderful overview of what we've been doing. I'm making me even more proud of what we've been doing. Next slide. We're just wrapping up now. How do you stay involved? You go to our Women in Religion Wikipedia project. You join us the second Monday of every month. We edit. The fourth Thursday of every month, we have a business meeting. You can write me. You can put your email in the chat if you want and tell us you want to be involved, and we will contact you right now. And I see a few questions, and Dr. Lolita Collins asked Clifford if you have the AI article and you could put the name in the chat. That would be great.
Okay, I'll do that right now.
And then Rebecca, do you have a hand raised? Rebecca Bartel?
I was just seconding that request.
Okay, okay. And now I'm going to go up to the top. And maybe I'll tell you what you could also do, Carol, who's become our ad hoc person, is go to our Wikipedia page, hit that link there. It should be a live link, and you can look at our Wikipedia page. Is it going? Did it go? Well, you're going to go there. Okay, great.
Rosalind, oh yeah, there it is. Great.
There it is. And you could see where we've got all of our monthly meetings on here. We've got our history. We've got who the editors are. We ask you to sign up as an editor, and we can help you with that because these pages are in source, if anybody knows the difference between source and visual editors. And then, let's see, does anybody else have any question? Well, you have the Jewish Women Archive online is a great resource for Jewish women, and thank you, Tim. And I'll tell you what, I created a Jewish Women New Orleans, which is on a Tulane website, and it's a great source. And what's good about these sources is they can be used as secondary sources because they're, you can't do Wikipedia on yourself. You can't do, you have to have secondary sources. And because the Jewish Women's Archive is a substantial archive, it's great. So thank you for giving that to us. How do you become a part? I think you can put your email down in here if you'd like. You can come in November to the AAR if you're swamped. And we are happy to engage you anytime. And Cindy, a few people want a link to your course syllabus. I don't know if you have that.
I've been collecting emails from direct messages, and I will get that out to folks.
Okay.
Not a link, but it'll probably be a PDF.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Okay, we can open this up to anyone who wants to ask a question. I believe you can unmute yourself and ask the question. I don't think it'll be too chaotic. Rebecca?
So I see Joe's question in the chat, but I wonder if we can stop the screen share and have a conversation. Awesome.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. I wanted to say just a few words. Thank you, everyone, so very much for this stimulating, lots of information, conversation, roundtable, and the, you know, the powerful, empowering work that you all are doing. Thank you so much. As this is our first meeting as a brand new seminar at the AAR. And so, you know, and it's our, you know, first online, you know, AAR online experiment. And so this is really, I think, an exciting place to launch this conversation that the group of us, there are a number of our, I think most of our members are here right now from the steering committee, on how, you know, the big question that sort of drives this seminar is how do we bring together these worlds of activism, committed and engaged scholarship in the study of religion, and who are the communities that we're accountable to as scholars? Who are the historically right now, you know, all of these different questions that are sort of the guiding directions for where this conversation we want, you know, that we want to take in over the next 5 years. So I'm so grateful for this conversation and what you folks have brought to it. And so I just wanted to name that and thank you. And I think Joe had a question. He's part of our steering committee. So take it away, Joe.
Yeah, well, I was just curious if you all had encountered any kind of resistance. And I guess that can take many different forms, but whether from other Wikipedia editors or from the broader kind of public in general, have you encountered that kind of pushback from anybody?
I'll go ahead and start with that, but probably a lot of people can on this panel. Every single person on this panel could respond to that. That is Christine in her presentation ended with community. And that is one of the things that makes us unique. And actually, there's a huge need for it because there is pushback on Wikipedia. Sourcing for articles about women is difficult. So we have to train people, editors, women and men, all people, to be aware of what the guidelines are and to follow the guidelines, which are biased because they are created within this patriarchal, Telezia is shaking her head, colonial framework. So we have to abide by those guidelines. But then we also have to push, always be pushing to the width of those guidelines, pushing at them appropriately, and that's a difficult task. Every single person here, every single editor has experienced putting up a article or something on their talk page that has gotten negative feedback on Wikipedia. And without the community, and Christine should speak to this and Telezia as well, that without the community, people get frustrated and more than frustrated, angry too. And so without people supporting you and saying, okay, let's look at what you did, you know, probably, you know, you take the critique and you look at what you could have done better, but then you also have the ability to answer back, and the community helps you to do that. So Christine, maybe you have something to say about that.
Yeah, there is harassment on Wikipedia, believe it or not, like on all online communities. And so that's part of the things that we come together to help us deal with that, and as a community to support and encourage each other. Articles about women and about female-centered topics tend to be more highly scrutinized. There have been studies that demonstrate that. And so that's part of it, is when the level is higher for us in the articles that we write than other articles that are not about women. it can get really frustrating. And again, that's Colleen's so right about that's where the community, it's also, we also need to be able to understand those policies that were created in a male-dominated situation. But we need to be able to understand them so that we can argue our position to include a source. And we need, and this Colleen calls it leveraging those Wikipedia policies in order to do that. So we have to really know them very well in order to do that. It's unfortunate that people have been really horribly harassed. I had a friend, a fellow editor who I never met, and I never knew her real name because she valued her privacy so much, because she was being harassed, she was being trolled, she got doxxed, you know, all those things. So it happens, and so it's something that as communities in Wikipedia band together to try and overcome those boundaries, those problems. So and I think that that's what, like I said in my presentation, it's what sets us apart. And I think we can be a good example of how this one group can battle against, use the anger to leverage policies and to increase content about women on Wikipedia.
Yeah, that is the point. I'm glad that Christine brought that up about leveraging the policies. You know, there's nothing so powerful as using the actual policies themselves to help help extend, you know, our ability to cover, and also to get involved and help change the policies, which is part of the point of doing the editing. So
we have access to Rosie Stevenson Goodnight and Women in Red. Every now and then when we have a problem, we contact them. We've thrown out trolls. Some of us have had more. I haven't had trolling, but Christine's had a little more. And you can get them thrown out. And also the head of the Wikipedia CEO now is a woman who was in reproductive rights for her career. And she told me personally, if y'all have any trouble, come to me. So I think you want it to be a more systemic change than individual trying to fix things, but it's nice to have that. Any other questions? Yes, Rebecca.
Okay. Thank you. Part of the intention of this group is to sort of explore this gap between activism and scholarship. And so I'm really interested in your methods and like how you come to bring these worlds together in a really, really practical, pragmatic way, but also reflecting on like the volumes of research that has been produced on women in religion. Like I'm thinking of Pamela Klassen's 4 volumes about women in religion, all the journals on feminism, religion, women in religion, gender and religion. I mean, there's so much scholarly work out there. Like, what is the process of engaging with that work, finding and deciding the forums and the people, the areas of scholarship? I don't know, you talked a lot about people really specifically, but I don't know if there are themes or historical moments or other things that are on Wikipedia that take into account the role of cis and trans women identifying people in history in the world. So I'm curious about this tension between scholarship and activism that's politically, and really you're committed to a specific community of people in the world. And so I'm interested in that conversation amongst you all.
I
I'm
know
going to ask Colin, Carol, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say for myself, because I run a research office, I really loved that we could, to a limited extent, grounded in research, but as people have pointed out, some of these women are underrepresented in the resources. And so I used Women in Red as my starting place. And I learned to tag it because, and that was one of the first things I figured out that one needed to do was to tag it and alert them that I'd written a bio for one of theirs. And that was the beginning of my sort of juicy conversation that then grew to include the Women in Religion group. Actually, one of the members of the group, Hillary, who's not here, reached out to me because I'd written a one about a nun that she knew. But then I got challenged by a man who said, hey, one of these women is not notable enough because why? He couldn't look her up. And Women in Red became my safety group. They actually came to my rescue instead of me arguing with them on my own. But going back to what you said about the research and the scholarship, there's also a lot of stuff sitting there that's just not used. This is by my friend Elena Brizio. She finds women in the archives in Siena, Italy, who have never made it into any resource. And so her book here is the very first way you could ever look one of these women up. And they ran the city, they ran the government, they ran the palaces. They were incredibly powerful and they never appeared anywhere. So, you know, finding people like Elena, I do, but you know, I want to pass it to someone else, but I would say that for me, I try to either ground it in the research or create the research.
Colleen, why don't you tell them what you're doing with your book? That applies.
You mean my little personal project of, yeah. Okay, so all of us have different things that we do to just do basic editing on Wikipedia to keep our hands into that. I just for a while was just sort of collecting a lot of the resources that you were talking about, the encyclopedia of this, the encyclopedia of that, that cover women. And we meet monthly to do just basic editing. And so I open the book up, I start at page 1 and I look through the information there. And if there is an article, right now I'm working on just improving articles. If there's not an article, I can add the woman to the to one of our lists, to our crowdsourced list, or to the Wikidata list, or to a work list. But if there is an article, I can go through the article and add a source, add some information and a source to that woman's page. And that is an activist act. The women on Wikipedia, if they do have articles, their articles are less well developed. And for us to improve those articles is a basic act of activism, and getting people to do that with us. Every editor we bring on board, every editor we train, it expands our knowledge. So that's number 1. So that's an activist act, and a part of the activism part of it. But also, if that article happens to be written by a woman, that using women as sources on Wikipedia articles gives women more coverage. It lifts their own notability. And so making a practice of doing that is an act of activism. I mean, we could go through all of the many things, the AI project, trying to figure out a way, because every day, I don't know how many new articles are published on Wikipedia, but the gender gap, closing that gender gap is difficult because there are so many people edit about what gives them what they're interested in. And so a man comes onto Wikipedia and he's putting on football players, and so it's just hard to decrease that gap. And so working with Clifford and other librarians who are interested in AI to think about how is it that we can leverage our work as a small group of people to do more. So that in itself, thinking that way, is an activist way of thinking. Okay, so
I would say there's multiple methodologies under one umbrella. We have education in the classroom. We have the books you're talking about. We have reaching out to other countries. We helped found the Australian group that's doing this. They have a podcast now. We have the Kenyan group. We kind of lost touch with our Indian group. because during COVID with health issues. So there's a lot of methodologies within our umbrella, and we each have our own methodologies of doing things. So I think the secondary sources in the books are very good for academics because it gives you a publication, teaches you how to write a biography, and then you just mine the resources in that biography to create the secondary sources. So Telezia and I now have a book coming out with matriarchs. We have another book. We're trying to look for editors with the Parliament of the World Religions. And I mean, y'all are publish or perish. We're all, you know, so sometimes it's hard to just go in every week and do a Wikipedia edit, but it's not hard to go deep into a person that's tangential to your work and write a biography, a 5,000 word biography, something like that.
Yes, please put your name in the chat if you'd like to receive the call for papers. We're always looking for authors. And that's another activist thing that we do. We have shepherded many young authors through their early publications, helping them with editing and helping them come out the other end with a great article.
Yeah, I didn't mean Native American. I meant the country of India.
Yeah.
And what is the gentleman's name, Colleen?
Jai Shah. I've reached out to him several times. You know, India was, as many countries were, decimated by COVID, and one of these days, that's what happens.
Find our way
People
back
go away, and then they come back, and that's okay. That's how it works, and that's how community works. So that's
okay. AAR, I'd hate to cut you off, Colleen, but we have like 2 more minutes, and AAR wants you to take a survey also. And is there another question? Maybe you could do that link, and outside of this 2 minutes we have, is there another question? And we so appreciate everybody coming. And this group, we're so excited about you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to Rosalind. Thank you too.
No, thank you all so much. I don't know if anyone else from the group wants to say anything. We have like 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I would just echo everybody's thanks. I think this was a great first session, really informative and important work. So thank you for bringing that. Particularly, one of the things that we wanted to focus on with this seminar was the relationship between activism and scholarship, as some people believe that activism is something that should remain outside, of course, drawing on lots of other epistemologies and critical voices. I think that this is really great and pertinent panel, so thank you.
I'm also
wonderful.
A link in the chat. That's my article for Global Sisters Report about why notable Catholic sisters need Wikipedia pages. But this whole group, actually, many of the people in this group, crowdsourced wrote it just like a Wikipedia page. So you can also see some of the facts and figures there and why. You can fill in the blank with anybody you think needs Wikipedia pages. It gives a good argument for it. And thanks to everybody who contributed to the piece.
And hopefully we'll see you in November. We're on Friday at 10 a.m. And if you want to join us, and we'll have a 2-hour session. And we involve Wiki education also. So thank you. Thank you.
Guys.
And my people too.
Thanks
everyone.
See you in November.
Okay. Bye-bye.